Jacksonville Jaguars do it again. Just when I think I'm done, just when I think I'm out, they reel me back in. They can never just be a normal team, but hey, I'm not complaining. They just broke the Chargers in dominating fashion, and looking at this schedule, starting to get excited again. But as always, it's 1 week at a time in the NFL, and I can't help but brace myself for a letdown this week. This team has broken me too many times with moments like this, and I can't help to look forward to possibly a disappointing future. But let's break it down. Welcome back to Jags Japan, where we talk all things Jags, all things Japan, everything in between, and I'm just a guy. This is the Week 12 preview show. This week, the Jags are going out west to take on a reeling Arizona Cardinals team at 3-7, while the Jags sit there at 6-4, everything in front of them. Today's preview show, we're going to go through it all. We're going to break down that massive victory over the Chargers, what that means going forward, go around the AFC South as always. We're going to go through some wildcard standings, see where the Jags might be able to kind of find their way in the playoff mix. They're in a really good position. And then, as always, we're going to break down the matchup for this week and give a score prediction here. And you all saw the title. I believe that this is a trap game coming in. Every year, you always have one or two of those games that you might be overlooking. I feel like a lot of Jags fans, a lot of people in general, might be looking to already December 7th. We might be overlooking both the Cardinals and the Titans coming up on the schedule, and that December 7th game, Colts at home, is looking bigger and bigger every single week, every single day. But we got this one to get through first. And yes, the Cardinals are not a very good team on paper, but there's just something off about this matchup that I feel I could be completely wrong, and I hope that I am. But this one, for all intents and purposes, a winnable game, and one the Jags should win, no doubt about it. But sometimes those are some of the scariest ones, in my opinion. But first, let's go a little deeper into this win against the Chargers. I was able to give my thoughts on it right after the game, as always with the post-game show. But after marinating on it a little longer, I think it just can't be understated how that might have been one of the best performances from a Jaguars team that I can remember since maybe the Ravens in London in 2017. I don't know if you guys remember that. I think it was week 2 or week 3 in London. Jags go out there and absolutely obliterate a really good Ravens team at the time. But I mean, what they just did against the Chargers was an absolute ass kicking, and something that they needed bad to kind of reinvigorate this team after, like I said in the post-game show, in the preview before that, feels like a whole month of nothing but negative energy around this team. And it just amazes me in the NFL how every week is just something new. I don't think as Jags fans we've had a season like this. Usually there's only maybe like 2 or 3 twists and turns in the whole season. I think about 2017, it was kind of up and down, but then it went way up. I think about the seasons after that where it's just down. Or in 2018 it was up and then it went straight down. Or in 2019, 2020, 2021, it was just always down. In 2022 it started down, but then it went up. In 23, it started up and then it went down. 24 was down the whole time. And then this year, I feel like it's up, down, down, way down, up again, down more, and then back up with this win here. It feels like every week's roller coaster. I personally felt like the season was over last week when they lost that fourth quarter lead to the Texans. And obviously, the season's not over. Literally, there's still 8 games. Anything can happen, as we know in the NFL, any given Sunday, as they say, as we saw this week. I just went into that game not feeling great at all about the Jags in almost every single way, and I guarantee a lot of fans out there didn't either. I was expecting the Chargers to come in and blow us out, to be totally honest. I would have just been happy if the Jags kept it close, hard-fought game, good effort, and just to respond well after that loss. And I definitely didn't have the Jags blowing out the Chargers on my bingo card on Sunday. It wasn't even in the realm of my imagination that could happen, because I saw the Chargers as a good team, even though they're a little bit injured. The Jags are just as injured. Oh, they have one of the worst offensive lines due to injury in the NFL. Oh, well, the Jaguars are last in the league in sacks, so what does that really matter? I thought they had a pretty good defense. I thought they had a pretty good offense, and I thought they would just come in and blow the doors off the Jags and move on, go to 8-3. The Jags would be stuck at 500 and be on the outside looking in the playoffs, in the playoff picture. But I can't tell if that's just the scarred Jags fan in me that has just seen too much, or just reaction over last week's absolute meltdown. If you look at the vibes going into that game, we had an entire month of negativity, from not being competitive in the Seahawks and Rams game to losing Travis Hunter for the season, on top of the myriad of injuries that we continue to have gotten from the offense and defense that are just piling up, barely squeaking by the Raiders by 1 point in overtime, and then letting Davis Mills continue his Jags dominance and blow that lead. It all sucked, I'll be honest. The last week, 2 weeks, since that Monday Night Football win against the Chiefs, it felt like everything's been downhill. But what the Jags did last Sunday is something I've rarely seen from a Jaguars team, and that's just a response, a whole team response. As Liam Cohen said after the game, the whole team was just pissed off, hungry, and it actually showed on Sunday. I think there's been a lot of Jags teams over the years that have been pissed off or mad or angry at how bad they are, but when it comes to Sunday, they still just aren't better than the other team, and they still lose. But that's not what happened. They came out and they really dominated. They really took their anger out on an opponent that you could argue was better than them in a lot of ways. And that's the thing, is that they didn't show this against, a bottom feeder team. It's not like, okay, the Jaguars had that awful loss. Well, here comes the get right game or anything. It was like, no, here comes a bona fide playoff team coming into your house. And not only that, but it was a team has had some signature wins in this league. It wasn't like they were facing the Titans or the Jets or anything, or the Saints. The Chargers are almost a lock for the playoffs with how well they started. And now the Chargers do have some problems that the Jags exposed. Like I said, their offensive line's in shambles. It stinks. And I don't know if Herbert's going to finish out the season with how much he gets dinged up. I'm not going to give the Chargers, though, the excuse or the caveat of injuries, because the Jags, I feel like, had just as many players out and absolutely dominated them in basically every statistical category. I don't know if people realize how much of domination that was. Because it's weird, because the Chargers were actually in a really good position to kind of take over that game. Early in the second quarter, it was when Trevor threw the interception. It was still 7-3 at the time. Chargers get the ball at the 40-yard line in prime position, and with all the momentum, but the Jags defense stepped up big. Josh Hines-Allen got his franchise record sack, forced them to kick only a field goal, and from that moment on, the very next drive, they go all the way down and score a touchdown, and ended up scoring on the next 4 straight drives in touchdowns, in demoralizing fashion too. Running the ball, passing the ball, offensive line just having their way up front with the Chargers defensive line. ETN, Tootin, hitting the holes, getting chunk yards. And on some of those plays, Bashal Tootin really bulldozing some people. And then Trevor and Jakobi Meyers, that connection keeps on improving, keep on moving the sticks with some really clutch throws. And in my opinion, this is kind of what I think the prime version of this offense can be, especially when we get some of our players back like BTJ and Brenton Strange and Hunter Long. And that's the thing, is that they don't even have their top 2 wide receivers going into this year that we thought with BTJ and Travis Hunter. De'Ami Brown has really been a non-factor in the past month, 2 months, really almost the whole season. You're going out there that depleted on offense and just with a whole different style of offense that we thought we were going to have going in. And that's kind of what a big reason why I thought they were going to lose, is because of how the offense has looked against good defenses. And the Chargers coming into that game were a good defense, top 10 in the league. So it was shocking to me to see a team featuring Tim Patrick, Austin Trammell as their wide receiver 3s on the field at times. Kudos to Jakobi Meyers, Parker Washington, Johnny Munt, and also to Tim Patrick for just being sure-handed, reliable targets to move the sticks when we drop back to pass. I remember, I think it was the opening drive. It was a third down and 6, and Trevor goes through his progressions and throws a somewhat catchable ball down the middle to Austin Trammell, and he gets his hands under it and moves the sticks. Stuff like that. Players that we don't expect too much, to be relied on, but just are coming up big in the moments that they're called on, especially when other players maybe aren't, or maybe when other players are out with injury. And huge kudos to Liam Cohen for showing us why he got hired. This kind of offensive performance is really, I think, his calling card. I think really why he got hired in the first place. Last year when he was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs, he had basically all of his top targets go down. Mike Evans, Godwin, out. And Liam Cohen still cooked up an offense for Baker Mayfield, and they didn't skip a beat and still led the league in passing and in rushing. While Baker Mayfield's throwing to practice squad wide receivers, kind of like what the Jaguars were at yesterday. So that's what's really special about Liam Cohen's offense. And I think when his back is against the wall, when we don't have all the Jimmies and the Joes that we thought we had going in the year, he decides to take it upon himself to adjust the game plan accordingly, figure out how can we get by with who we have, how can we win this game and dominate on offense. Sticking to the run game, 47 carries in the game for almost 200 yards. I think really exposing the Chargers in the pass game. with just a few simple route combinations. Like I remember Jakobi Meyers getting wide open on the right side of the boundary. Some route combinations over the middle, just designed for Trevor just to see it and rip it into a small window, which is something that we have wanted to see for a while now, I think, in Trevor Lawrence's career. And speaking of that, we'll go ahead and just get to our Trevor Lawrence rant of the week. I'm going to get to it early, but I think this really might be one of his best performances of the year. Even though the stats might not say it, I'm definitely not going to say like, oh, Trevor Lawrence is the reason that they won, or Trevor did anything crazy special. But he ran the offense how it was supposed to be ran, made the throws he was supposed to make. He had the one bad throw, which we'll get to in a second. And yeah, I mean, his stats don't back it up, but I think in a game like this, stats really don't matter. Because you look at the stats and you say, okay, he barely had 60% completion percentage, 150 yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick. But also remember that he didn't play the entire fourth quarter because they were up by so much. Also remember that the Jags ran the ball for almost 200 yards and only had to drop back 22 times in the entire game. But it's the quality of the throws and when they happen that matter. Early on, it looked like maybe he was a little rattled, by the coverages that the Chargers like to do. Jesse Minter is a really good defensive coordinator. He'll probably get a promotion, possibly head coach gig in the next year or two. So they were confusing him early on, but I think after that interception, like maybe a light kind of flicked on in Trevor Lawrence's head, and he started threading the needle on some throws in the short and intermediate passing game that we just haven't seen in a while from him. For a long time, or maybe really ever that I can remember. I mean, for a long time, Trevor's really known as a really efficient deep ball thrower, like 15, 20 plus. He can thread the needle for some reason 25 yards down the field or hit a big deep pass on the money. But when it comes to those 5 to 15 yards or even behind the line of scrimmage, for some reason he can't get it on target. And then the whole thing of him struggling to maybe read coverages or being a one-read quarterback, not getting the ball out to the right man and then the right window with the right accuracy, with the right touch, all of those things. Point is, he's not been the best short to intermediate thrower of the football in his career. But in this game, I saw a lot of decisiveness. Some of those throws to Jakobi Meyers and Johnny Munt over the middle in tight coverage, exactly what we want to see from him moving forward. So good on Trevor, kind of shutting up a little bit of the haters this week, but I mean, I think when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, it's a week-to-week thing. He could look great, have a great performance like he did in the Kansas City game, and then he could come back and have a pretty lackluster performance like he did in the Seattle game. So that's the thing with Trevor Lawrence. It's always been inconsistencies, right? With the schedule moving forward, can we see this passing game kind of get back on track and Trevor to kind of minimize a little bit more of those mistakes? I think the interception that he threw was bad. Got to lead the receiver more and know the situation. You're on your side of the field in a tight game. It's first down, 1st and 10, and you have Tim Patrick running a quick out route. It was obvious that he saw pressure there, checked out of a play. It was probably a run play. He saw, I think it was Perryman trying to blitz the gap, checked into a pass play, but I think it fell right into the Chargers' hands. I think they were going to play pass coverage, off coverage, and kind of bait Trevor to making a mistake. Well, it's exactly what happened. Corner baited it, was sitting on that out route. So for Trevor, if he wanted to throw that, it had to have basically been way out of bounds or, a place only Tim Patrick can get it. It's weird because that's maybe not a throw we usually see Trevor underthrow. He's usually pretty good on those quick out routes, and if he does throw a bad ball, it's usually out of bounds or high. Now, something went wrong on that one. I'll give him a pass on it because who was running the route in a way, I kind of blame a little bit of Liam Cohen for even giving Trevor that option, because it's like you just know Trevor's going to he's going to try to make any throw on the field he thinks he can, which he can, but sometimes you just can't do a throw like that, or you have to put it in the perfect spot. And with Tim Patrick running a quick out, which isn't his thing, he's a kind of a big body possession receiver. He's not shifty, twitchy, make a miss and make a play at the boundary kind of guy. At least I don't think so. And we all know Trev is good for at least one big blunder a game, at least one big play where you're like, what are you doing? How are you a starting quarterback in this league? But he did come back and respond well, and I think played basically lights out since that interception. Since that play, it was big time throw after big time throw. Really good stuff from your franchise quarterback. So, I've just kind of accepted that he will never have like the fantasy stats or anything like that. Trevor's just one of those guys. You look at the box score or you look at fantasy, you're going to wonder why he even has a job in the NFL. But for those who do know ball, for those who watch him throw, maybe watch all of his games, you know that there is a top 10 franchise quarterback in there somewhere, and it shows a lot of the times but then he just has those boneheaded mistakes that kind of bring him down, and it's kind of like he's going, it's just those highs and lows and those inconsistencies that he's got to maybe bring back down. It's like, we'll even take away some of those highs if we can get some of those lows out of there, because the lows is how you lose games, and that's how they almost lost momentum and could have made that a much tighter game if the Chargers capitalized on an interception. But Jaguars won 35-6. It's kind of hard to even complain about anything, but Trevor Lawrence is always just going to be there's always going to be a narrative. There's always going to be a topic to talk about him until, like, I don't know. I guess when he wins a Super Bowl, or if he wins an MVP, maybe we won't have to go deep dive on Trevor Lawrence every single play. But this game wasn't about Trevor Lawrence. This game was about the defense shutting out the man who is the stats machine, the man who is the ultimate guy, who is a top fantasy quarterback, has all the touchdowns, has all the yards, but sometimes doesn't come through when it matters. And that's Justin Herbert. Somehow the Jags defense held him to 80 yards passing, and that's who showed up the most, in my opinion. The Chargers, with all their weapons, that I was pretty scared of. Lad McConkey, didn't hear his name called. Keenan Allen had a few decent catches, like 2 or 3 catches for like 50 yards. That was all they had in receiving. Their tight end, Gadsden, or whatever his name is, who I thought was going to come in and put on a Brock Bowers performance or a reincarnation of Antonio Gates, he wasn't around. So with all those weapons and a top 10 quarterback back there who could sling it, only 135 total yards of offense, that's shocking. Kind of begs the question is, where was this all year? And it's almost like, okay, what Jags defense are you going to get this year? Are you going to get the defense that lets up 300 yards to Davis Mills? Or are you going to get the defense that holds Justin Herbert to 80 yards? It's kind of incredible, even with all the injuries coming in. But I think we know that the answer is that I think the Jags defense was just really, really pissed off after that showing against the Texans. And that showed from the first snap of the game. Defensive line showed up. That was encouraging to see. It's good, too, because if the defensive line wasn't going to be able to get home against that group, then we might be looking at a year where the Jags max get 20 sacks, because that offensive line, those tackles are bad, and they took advantage of it. So that's off to the defense with, I think, maybe their best performance of the year, and maybe one of the best performances of the year by any team in the NFL on a unit basis. Also, obviously, a special shout out to Josh Hines-Allen breaking the franchise record in sacks, and I know this year he's been kind of much maligned. People saying maybe he's not worth the money. I've criticized him as well, but I think it is pretty crazy when you look at the Jags list of the pass rushers, and you see Josh Hines-Allen up there, and he did it in fewer games than Tony Brackens did. The Jags have not had luck with pass rush in its entire franchise, so it's cool to at least have that guy, and I think he could be here for years to come, and I think it won't be long until we see Trayvon Walker on that top 5 list as well. But as for what this win means, big picture, in my opinion, I think the Jags really needed to steal a win on their schedule from one of those good teams down the stretch if they really wanted to make the playoffs. Either the Colts twice, the Broncos, or the Chargers. And you could argue that the Chargers might have been the most important win, might have been the most important game on the schedule in regards to those teams, because you could argue that the Colts might run away with the division if the Jags don't sweep them or at least split with them in the next coming weeks. The Broncos have taken commanding lead in the West since they recently beat the Chiefs. So to have a tiebreaker over both the Chargers and the Chiefs, huge players in that wildcard race, that win really ensures that if the Jags just take care of business and win the games that they should win, they could easily have about 10 wins when it's all said and done. And I think 10 wins gets you in the playoffs, especially when it comes to tiebreakers. I think 9 wins, I think you're playing with fire, and you could get a team like the Ravens or the Steelers or even the Texans if they get Stroud back and get healthy and their offense clicks. 9 wins could get you bounced out. I think 10 is the number you got to get to. The Jaguars, I think, really put them in prime position to get 10 wins. When you think about, obviously, the 4 winnable games coming up with, of course, the Cardinals, Titans twice, and the Jets. That's 10 wins if it's just played on paper, but the game isn't played on paper, so we'll see about that. But not only for the playoffs, I think this win could really spark something internally for the team, giving them confidence that, hey, we just played a team, had a foothold on the number 5 seed that has 7 wins, one of the best teams in the AFC record-wise, and beat them down, demoralize them, showed dominance in every single part of the game. They already beat the Chiefs in dramatic fashion, outclutched the Chiefs, which is very hard to do. They went out west and beat the 49ers team, a Shanahan team that's had your number for a while, a perennial playoff team year in and year out. And after going through the last 4 games, against good teams, you look terrible. Against bad teams, you look eh. I think the season could have really spiraled out of control for the team if they didn't win that game on Sunday, or if they at least didn't respond the way that they did. I think they could have easily phoned it in. I was expecting that, but they didn't, and ended up having their biggest game of the season. And like I said, not only that, but they did it against a good playoff team. And they did it while also being depleted on both sides of the ball with injuries. At one point, you're down your top 3 starting corners as Greg Newsome went out pretty early in that game. Your starting safety is still on IR in the back end, and a lot of questions about Antonio Johnson and his bad play recently. On offense, you're down your top 2 wide receivers coming into the year in BTJ and Travis Hunter. You're down your top 2 tight ends in Hunter Long and Brenton Strange. Your best offensive tackle coming into the game, Anton Harrison's out, with Khalil Mack on the other side. But then our backups, our depth, our floor, as James Gladstone would say, really rose to the occasion. Monteric Brown, Antonio Johnson, Jerrion Jones, Johnny Munt, Cole Van Lennon stepped up and played very well. Players that we're not necessarily counting on to win us games, but come in and just do their job. And then the guys that are supposed to carry your team also did that. Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd, Arik Armstead, Trevor Lawrence, ETN, Tootin, Jacoby Myers, the guys who are your kind of blue chip players, the guys that are supposed to carry your team did. And in my opinion, I think that's maybe the most important takeaway from this game, and a big reason why the Jaguars blew them out. Our good players played good, and even great at times. And for once, it was the other teams who their star players didn't show up and had a terrible performance. So all of that, and the Jaguars should be getting healthy again pretty soon. Hopefully we get Strains, BGJ, Jordan Lewis coming back in the lineup next week. So things are looking pretty good for the Jags, good for the organization, giving us all some life. It's going to set up nicely for a good division and a wild card race here coming up. So which brings me to the rest of the AFC South. We're going to go through them really quick. Colts are on the bye week. They still sit in prime position at 8-2, and that December 7th game in Jacksonville is looking bigger and bigger by the minute. They do have the Chiefs and the Texans next, so if they can somehow be 9-3 coming into Jacksonville, and if the Jaguars can take care of business against the Cardinals and Titans and be 8-4 by the time that they face off each other, I think we got a big game on that date. But we can't get too ahead of ourselves. It's up to the Jags to take care of business. But it will be interesting to me to see how the Colts come out after the bye week and see if they really have that offense dominating like they have this year, and specifically their run game. I saw a stat that said Jonathan Taylor was on pace to have over 2,100 yards rushing and 23 touchdowns this year. I'm sorry, but I just don't know. I just don't think that's going to happen. At least I think, if he really does end up doing that and he has the best year by running back ever, then sure, I guess. Congratulations. But I think there's got to be some kind of regression for the Colts coming soon. I think the schedule gets a little bit tougher for them. Daniel Jones is kind of coming back to earth. He hasn't played really well. I think I saw it said he had, 10 turnovers in the last 7 quarters or something like that. So we'll see about the Colts. Obviously, they're a really good team, really tough team, but I think those 2 divisional games might decide the division when it's all said and done, but we'll see. The Titans and Texans, meanwhile, had a real barn burner, and it was exactly what you would expect from Davis Mills versus any other team that's not the Jags. And look, it's just the Titans are the worst team in the NFL by far. So the Texans did win 16-13. They stay alive in the wild card race, 5-5, with Stroud still out. We all as Jags fans just hope to God that loss to the Texans doesn't haunt us, because they're nipping at the heels, right? They're right on the edge. They're at that 8th seed on the outside looking in. So as long as the Jags just take care of business and don't let the Texans get in. Which brings us back to the Jags, still second in the division, 6-4, and 7th seed in the playoffs, and everything in front of them. Taking a look at the wild card standings, the Bills have a commanding lead of that 5 seed. I don't expect them to kind of give that up after a really good win against the Bucs. They have their flaws, but it just feels like Josh Allen and the Bills are going to get it rolling. They're going to end up being there right at the 5 seed, be looking to give whoever wins the AFC North a run for their money. Which if it's the Steelers, that'll be funny, because it'll just be another year of the Steelers going, 9-8, 10-7, and then getting bounced out in the first round of the playoffs. But now the Chargers are there in the 6th seed, right in front of the Jags for now, with the Texans, Chiefs, and Ravens trailing close by. The good news for the Jags is that they have by far, I think, the easiest schedule out of all those teams. And in reality, if the Chargers don't respond after this loss and end up kind of falling off, especially with all the injuries they have, or if that offensive line keeps getting Herbert hit hard, I mean, I could see the Chargers honestly falling off, and maybe the Ravens or, God forbid, the Texans taking that spot with how they're both playing recently. And of course, there's also the Chiefs always there. But I just want to see if the Jags get in somehow. Even if they're the 7th seed, just take care of business. You got 4 really winnable games left. 10-7 is right in their grasp. Just take care of each week, and they can definitely do that. But speaking of each week, let's finally get into this week, the Arizona Cardinals. This game matchup, a game that on paper, the Jaguars should have no problem handling. But something about this game just doesn't sit right with me. Before we get into it, I want to take you all on a historical journey back to 2017. When the Jags last played Arizona on the road, the Jags were rolling 7-3, one of the best seasons I can ever remember in my lifetime as a Jags fan, taking on Blaine Gabbert. Yes, Blaine Gabbert and the 4-6 Cardinals team. The Jags went out there, and as they do with all backup quarterbacks, especially ones that used to play for the Jags, they played down to their level and make the backup QB look like an all-pro elite quarterback. And they ended up losing that game to the Blaine Gabbert led Cardinals. In a very weird, fluky fashion. It was on a last-second field goal, and it ended up not mattering because the Jags still made the playoffs that year. But I remember I was so mad during that game, back as a 18-year-old young Jags fan. But anyway, I'm just hoping that history does not repeat itself, because we got a Jacoby Brissett leading a 3-7 Cardinals team with nothing to lose, and sometimes history just flat out repeats itself. And I think that just the scarred Jags fan in me just can't get that out of my head for this game. Let's break it down and see what happens. Let's start out with some injury news. Jags are still pretty beat up, looking to get some reinforcements back this week, though. It is believed the Jags will be getting back some of their stars on offense and defense: Brendan Strange, Brian Thomas Jr., Jordan Lewis. As of today, Tuesday morning, it's not confirmed, but it is expected, I think, that they would be coming back. I think both Strange and Thomas, and I think Lewis as well, were held out more for precautionary reasons. And it was clear that Brian Thomas was on track to play on Sunday, but they just held him out last minute. But I think it's expected that he's going to get back. There's still some questions on Anton Harrison, Hunter Long, Greg Newsome, if they will be out as well. Right now they're questionable. I think I would expect maybe Greg Newsome to play, but we'll see about Anton and Hunter Long. On the Cardinals side, they do have a ton of people in IR right now. And I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not going to pretend to know all of the names or their status. I have not watched a lot of Cardinals games this year. I watched some highlights. I've looked at their depth chart. Maybe it's the East Coast bias in me, but I can't keep up with all 32 teams and the depth players on all the teams, let alone a last place team in the NFC West. I try to focus more on AFC, specifically AFC South, so apologize. I don't know all these players, and I think to me that's more of a case of why I think the Jaguars should win this game. But a few to keep an eye on, of course, is their top receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., and their top corner, Will Johnson. They're questionable for the game, and I think if both of them are out for some reason, should be all the more reason for the Jags to win this game. So let's break down the Jags offense versus the Cardinals defense. The Cardinals are ranked bottom 3rd in the league in total defense and bottom half in rushing defense. They have some decent players on their D-line. Calais Campbell, even though he's aging, still a really solid player. I would have liked the Jaguars to go after him maybe in trade deadline or even in free agency, but he's still doing his thing in Arizona. Good for him. Love Calais, always will. But I hope he has a bad game this week. And then Josh Sweat as well is pretty good on the edge. So that's one thing about the Cardinals. They can rush the passer pretty decently. So our tackles are definitely going to have to be on their A game. Their interior is kind of meh. I do like Dalvin Tomlinson. I even thought the Jaguars may be able to get him in a trade or something as well. But their interior D-line and their linebackers outside of Zaven Collins really don't scare me a lot. And in the back end, they do have an excellent safety in Budda Baker, but are pretty banged up in the secondary. And I think the Jags should have no problem in the passing game, especially if by chance Will Johnson is out as well. But even if he's in, he's still a rookie and can be picked on, in my opinion. However, my key for the Jags offense in this game is probably going to be the key for basically every team moving forward, and that's going to be running the ball. Until I see otherwise, until we see teams consistently stop this Jags team running the ball, I'm going to say just keep running it down their throats. Coming off the best offensive performance of the year, both by I think the offensive line and the running backs and just all around, I expect to see a lot of ETN, a lot of Tootin. And then also getting our best blocking tight end back and Brenton Strange, I think will help a lot, especially on those blitz zones that worked so well against the Chargers. Now, the Cardinals aren't as bad at stopping the run, and Jonathan Gannon is a pretty solid defensive coordinator and has a lot of fire in his gut. I'll just say that. But the Jags have proved a lot this season that, unless your defense is elite, and specifically your defensive line, unless your defensive line is elite, the Jags can run the ball on you. I believe the only times the Jaguars have really struggled to run the ball, I believe it was the Seahawks, the Rams, the Texans, and I believe maybe the Chiefs. So obviously all the games that they've lost or not looked good in, they haven't been able to run the ball. But those are kind of those top tier defensive lines. And even though the Chiefs aren't top tier, but they still have some good players like Chris Jones and Karlaftis that are really going to stop in the run, and good linebackers that can do that too, like Nick Bolton. Other than that, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Texans, those are probably the top three defensive lines in all of football. So yeah, of course they weren't able to run the ball well on them either. So the Cardinals definitely don't have that. So I do think the Jaguars are going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively. And then also in the passing game, I kind of foresee a little bit of an evolution, especially when Brian Thomas Jr. comes back for this passing game. I think day by day that Jakobi Meyers trade is really turning out to be genius, because I think he's really carving out, I think, a nice role as kind of that possession receiver over the middle, very reliable. And I think it's going to open up a lot in this upcoming stretch for the passing game. In my opinion, it may even resemble that Jags 2022 offense in the back half when we had Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, and Evan Ingram. I think we have a very similar skill group as back then, as I think Parker Washington can play that kind of shifty slot receiver that Christian Kirk played. BTJ can do kind of the outside the numbers, deep route stuff that Zay Jones would do, be that deep threat. Jakobi Meyers being that reliable kind of possession receiver on big downs going across the middle like Marvin Jones used to do, and being a potential red zone threat. And then Brenton Strange, I think, being a mismatch as a tight end like Evan Ingram was, but also who is a mauler in the run game. Pair all of that with two good backs in ETN and Tootin, and a solid third down back in LaQuint Allen, and with one of the league's easiest schedules going forward when we look at these defenses, I think we're looking at what could be kind of a special offensive surge after rolling against the Chargers. I think the offense has been pretty disappointing this year, I'd say. I even said last week I think they looked kind of like ass for most of the year, very clunky, just not what we thought we were getting coming into the year. I thought, if anything, we were going to see some fireworks on the scoreboard, as Liam Cohen said in his introductory press conference. We haven't seen that at all this year, besides last week. Last week, 4 touchdowns in a row, dominating in the run game and in the passing game. That's what I thought we were getting this year with this offense. And with how much we had invested in getting Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr.'s second year, none of that stuff has really worked out. But now, throughout the season, we've kind of seen this offense evolved. And if they can establish a run game, it really opens up so much in the passing game. And now that they have kind of that big-time possession receiver that they really needed in Jakobi Meyers to kind of fill that role over the middle on big downs, like third down and fourth down, I think I see them kind of going through that. And then if BTJ can come back and just do what he's comfortable doing, outside the numbers, out routes, comebacks, go routes on those play action passes, and then Parker Washington working that slot and being sure-handed, I think we can see some pretty cool stuff from this offense and passing game moving forward. But let's get into what scares me about this game, and that's going to flip us over to the Jags defense versus the Cardinals offense. And look, Cardinals are obviously without Kyler Murray. Jags fans probably wish Kyler was starting, because even though Jacoby Brissett doesn't scare me a bit, it's just this defense against the backup quarterback. I wasn't scared of Davis Mills either, but we all saw what happened there. They have a pretty decent run game and offensive line that has kind of kept the offense going. Jacoby Brissett is one of those backups. Isn't going to maybe elevate the team around him, but he's going to run the offense. He's going to limit mistakes. He's going to get the job done. And he's had some pretty solid performances, honestly. And it's a big reason why the Cardinals are willing to let Kyler Murray go, and he's probably not going to be in Arizona next year, because Jacoby Brissett has come in and run the offense a lot better than Kyler Murray has. He does kind of honestly remind me a lot of Davis Mills. He's a very high level backup in the NFL, but still he's a backup. He's Jacoby Brissett. I've been watching him since, 2013, 2015, 2016, and he's always been kind of mid. He's had some pretty good moments. There's a reason why he's never been the guy. And as far as the passing game, obviously it's highlighted by Marvin Harrison Jr. Still unsure if he will go for the game. Michael Wilson is the only other receiver that scares me because he's a little shifty. He's kind of a deep threat. But obviously their biggest threat is Trey McBride. And the combination of a backup quarterback and a very good tight end is probably this defense's biggest downfall. I think the Jags will be able to slow down the run game of the Cardinals, as they do with almost every single team. But I think the difference is if they'll be able to contain McBride, and that's my key to the game. Do not let McBride have a Brock Bowers, Dalton Schultz performance on you. Because in my opinion, he's up there with Bowers, Tyler Warren, George Kittle in that number one tight end tier, in my opinion. So if they can find a way to not let him beat them, I'm sure he'll get his. He'll probably still end the day with 70 or 80 yards receiving. But the key is, can you just limit him to maybe 70 yards and 1 touchdown instead of 150 yards and 3 touchdowns like Brock Bowers would have had. So if they can do that, I think they should have no problem containing this offense and giving the Jags offense every opportunity to score, because they're going to need to. Moving on to X factors on offense, I'm going to go with Bashal Tutin. He had his best game last week, and I think the Jags may look to get him even more involved with how good he's running the rock recently. Maybe not as clear as the running back one yet. I think it's still ETN's room. I think he's earned that. ETN has had one of his best years in a Jags uniform that I can remember. But Tutin has a certain dynamism that I think can really shine here. And if he can get rolling some more, I can see Tutin having another 5-yard a carry, 75-yard rushing day from him, and the offense has a big day. I think it'll be on the legs of Bashal Tutin and Travis Etienne, but specifically Tutin. On defense, I'm going to go Trayvon Walker. I think Trayvon could have a big day here. He had one of his best games last Sunday, and with Jonah Williams, their starting right tackle, out, possibly. I don't know if he's out yet. He's questionable, but I think he could have a big day against either Jonah Williams or whoever the backup is, while Josh Hines-Allen may have his hands full with a pretty good young tackle in Paris Johnson. So those are my X factors. I think those two players can really wreck the game on offense and defense. So let's get to the score prediction here. And as much as I teased earlier in the video that this is a trap game and how much I think the Jags are going to repeat history here and disappoint us, I actually have the Jaguars winning this game here 23-17. And I had every inclination going into this preview that I was going to pick the Cardinals to upset the Jags here, purely on the grounds of just my gut and being a Jags fan. My gut says that the Jaguars lose this game. It's another backup quarterback. The defense is going to have a letdown. The offense does something stupid. The Jags lose the game in kind of a fluky way to bring everyone back down to earth after that big win against the Chargers. And as much as the Jags have hurt me over the years, and even in this season, I think I'm going to trust Liam Cohen here. I'm going to trust that he doesn't let us down, that the Jags stay up, stay on a high, and then they get the win here. On paper, the Jags should be able to stop the running attack, hopefully make Brissett one-dimensional, keep McBride from beating them. And on offense is really where I think the game can be won, with the Jags' run game, Trevor's chemistry with these receivers, and the offense rolling a lot better now, hopefully getting Brenton Strange back, getting BTJ back, and a more limited role that I think will maybe give him a little more confidence. I think all the signs are pointing for the Jaguars to win this game handily, which scares me because in my gut, this is usually a game they lose. But going through it, talking it out, going through everything, the more and more I lean to, okay, the Jags actually might win this game. But if this is a letdown game and the old Jags show up again, I won't be surprised at all. But it's not the end of the world if they do. Losing to an NFC opponent out west, doesn't hurt you that bad in regards to kind of the playoff mix, but it really makes the next 2 games in the schedule, the 2 divisional games, really big games. The Jags do take care of business here and move to 7-4. I think the Jags stock will probably be at an all-time high. Really big opportunity going into Nashville, possibly getting to 8 wins. And 8 wins is what I picked them at the beginning of the year to go into the season. I thought they would go 8-9. That was my that was my record prediction for the Jags this year. So if they get to 8 wins by week 13, I'm going to be feeling great about this team moving forward. So we'll see what actually happens. Which Jags team shows up on Sunday? That's always the biggest factor. And let's see if we can just avoid the typical Jags trap game disappointment. Either way, it's been a really fun season so far. I'm hoping for some more fun and another win on Sunday. Let me know what you think is going to happen. Drop in the comments what your prediction is, what your score prediction here is, and what you think about the Jags going forward. As always, stay tuned for more Jags Japan content. I'll have that post-game show out Sunday as always. Go Jags, and I'll see you later.